Okay, we're back to the story of Carrie Rupp and all the government officials, RCMP members, and we're speaking with Frank Frost.
They kill more children than they save. I gotta give Carrie that one. That's true. That's true. But they all work together to make sure that they put as much despair in these children's lives and our lives in particular, especially the ones, and they know who they are, that have lost their children, have been stolen from them, from these people, the Ministry of Children and Families and others. Now, I'd like to address Carrie. She sold me out in court for $50,000 at minimum. She sold Tony out. She sold Sharice out. She sold out Rihanna, David, Rosie, Johanna, Elise, Jamie, the murdered child. But most of all, she sold you out. All of us. She betrayed us all by not telling the truth. She made me out to be this ogre that was forcing her to do all this. I didn't force her to do this. Jeff McDonald stood at the truck while Walter Jervis and I sat in the truck. Carrie was standing outside and she told him, "This is all true. This happened to me." And Jeff McDonald, as you know, is the Crown prosecutor who prosecuted me and her and the whole 9 yards. They tried to make me out to be some pervert. Abducting a child under the age of 14, they charged me with. And not obeying a court order to stay away from the children. Those are my children.
Could you describe the day that happened? What day? What day was that?
That was on January 29th. Carrie, the night before.
2013?
Yes. Carrie, the night before, told me what her plans were, and I told her that I wasn't going to get involved in anything like that at all. I would drive her there, drop her off, and leave. And that's exactly what I did. We went to the ministry office. She was telling Jesse exactly what she thought of her and what they'd done and was wrong, and they kidnapped our children. They had agreed to give them back on December 31st.
The ministry office in McBride?
In McBride, yeah. And anyway, when we left from there, Carrie just announced on the way out the door that she was going to go and get the kids. And I told her as we were walking to the truck, I'm not going anywhere near that place without a cop. I drove her over there, and I dropped her off, and I left and went to the store. When I came back, she was on the corner by the Bank of Nova Scotia here in McBride. I picked her up. We went to the police station, talked to Teresa Caputo. She said Barry would be back at 10. So I said, good enough, we'll be back then. We left. I drove down the street. As we drove by the street where 3rd Avenue, where the Robson Valley Center was, I noticed Barry's car. I drove down there and I parked right behind his car. I had no fear of any criminal charges or anything else of that matter ever coming back on me because there was a cop in the building. But they all lied about that. They said that I was parked out front. I came with Carrie only one time. They said she didn't come there twice. Barry even denied even talking to Carrie in the building. Carrie came out and said, I talked to Barry in there. He said to go home and wait for him to come. And then Barry got on the phone. He was on the phone on the deck at her house in town. And she was living in town at that time. And with Jeff McDonald going over all of the little dirty details, how to separate us again. And that's what they do. They separate the herd. That's what they do best, is separate the family unit and make it so that you're not a team anymore. And they at that time, that night when we went to Prince George.
What night was that?
That was the night of January 29th. She was tortured by 5 RCMP officers in a cell in the prison in Prince George. On the documents, you'll see that I made a request of the Corrections BC to look into that matter, and you'll see their response. And they'll never do anything about that. As far as they're concerned, it never happened. And every time I bring it up in court, they just totally ignore what I say. And they've tortured her ever since. Look at the tape of her interview with Kennedy. The last words she says are very interesting. How did I do? How did I do? Now, why would you say something like that with an interview of that nature? And then look at her face when she sits in the chair. The face of terror on her face. I feel no remorse for her because she sold me out. And she sold out all our children and our whole society. Every one of us bear the responsibility no matter what happens. No matter what happens, we all bear the responsibility of knowing that we did our best to make things right. Our society can't sustain what these people do. And it's my responsibility and your responsibility to see to it that these judges, Judge Gray, Judge Weatherly, Judge Daly, and Judge Cullen, and the whole raft of others, of other judges all around this province and across this country, they have to be put in their place. They forget that they work for me. They work for me and you. And we are the ones that have the power to fix this. And trust me, like I said earlier, I don't want the government brought to their knees at all. I want you to be on your feet. Stop being a worm, crawling around with your head in the sand, putting your head in the shit. Not manure, shit. Stand up and be counted. Let all of these people know that you now know what they did. And it's your responsibility to do that. Mine as well. That's why I'm talking to you and everyone around this world. And I appeal to everybody in the world who's watching this to do the same thing. Go to the Canadian Embassy and tell them exactly what you think of them being on your soil doing these things to your children. Tell them that you don't want their dirty little dicks in little children. Nobody wants that. But they allow it every day. That's what they do. That's what they do best. And it doesn't matter to me what religion you are. I don't care. There's good people in all. Trust me. There's good people in the Jewish religion, the Catholic religion, the Muslim religion, the Buddhist religion, and every religion that I could even ever think of that wrote a book of any kind that's called a Bible. All of these Bibles refer to what I'm talking about. Every one of them disagree with the treatment and abuse of children. Every one of them. Not one agrees that you should ever abuse a child. They are our future. All around the world, every country that's looking and listening to what I'm saying knows this. They are our future. I see a better future. These people don't. They're too busy worrying about filling their pockets and corporate interests and covering up murders of innocent children. That's what they do best. But we are better than that. I don't want any of these people hurt physically. None of them. Not one of them. I want them in prison. If you and I were doing this, we would go to prison. And speaking of which, when I was in prison in Prince George for 4 months, I talked to every young man on that unit. They didn't fall for this trick of these people charging me with abduction of a child under the age of 14 and be thrown right into general population. They did that for a purpose, so that I would get the shit beat out of me because they would refer to me as a Skinner. They knew I wasn't a Skinner. They weren't fooled by these people at all. They knew exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. And they were very supportive and extremely, extremely forthcoming with their stories. I discovered there that 95% of the young men on that unit, most of which were Native, by the way.
Which unit is that?
And 3 East, in the BC Correctional Unit in Prince George. 95% of those young men in that prison were sexually abused in a foster home. The other remaining percentage were physically abused by social workers and foster parents. We are not in control of who is selected to be a foster parent. The Ministry of Children and Families are. Now, that tells me that they select these perverts intentionally. You couldn't possibly be that wrong, could you? You couldn't possibly make that horrific mistake that 95% of the young men were sexually molested. And I'm only speaking about the young men. What about the young women? The little children? All of them were children at the time. Every one of them. They told me their stories, horrific stories. Horrific. You know, and on that, I got to tell you one story about a young man that went to his leaders of his community on the reserve and told them what they were doing. And his feelings today, and I won't say his name because I don't want any of these people going after him for this. He said that he believed that the leaders of his people on that reserve were supporting the MCFD and the RCMP in doing this. He's from a very poor reserve, most of which are. You know, us white people, they say, you know, I've had people say it to me. Oh, the fucking Indians, they get everything they want. Look at all the money they get. No. Well, they don't get all the money. The chosen ones in the reserves get the money. The ordinary folk, they live in squalor. Believe me, they can tell you themselves they live in squalor. And their children are being molested constantly. Constantly by the RCMP and the Ministry of Children and Families. We have to end this. There is no room in our society for any kind of activity like this. We can't sustain that as a society. I want these Native communities to stand up. Not the leaders of this community, because they've had more than opportunity to do so. I want the people in those communities to stand up and realize, no, that what I'm saying is true. They know this. They know it's true. Stand up and be counted.
Could you be a little descriptive? We're going to go back a bit. Can you let us know what form and what modus operandi that the RCMP used in your arrest?
They separate you first. We were both charged together, but we never went to court together. She had a separate court case where she pleaded guilty. I didn't. I pled innocent. And because of that, I spent 3 months in prison for something they wanted 30 days for, by the way. When you plead innocent, you spend more time in jail than you do if you plead innocent, or guilty, sorry. That's how our system is set up. You plead guilty, we'll let you go. You plead innocent, you're sitting right there, buddy, until you rot.
Were you supposed to appear, was your original court case to appear in McBride?
Yes.
And did they have it transferred to Prince George while you were incarcerated?
Actually, no. They transferred it to Valemount first, and then they transferred it to Prince George.
What did they do when they transferred it to Prince George?
Well, what it was they wanted me not to have my subpoenas handed out to the people for me to prove this conspiracy.
Did you have to sign a waiver to say that you were guilty just to have it transferred to another court?
Yes.
That's a violation of the charter, wouldn't you think?
Of course it is. The Charter of Rights stopped outside the door in my case, and in many others, I might add. It never came in the room. Judge Gray saw to it. He knew that I never had accessibility to a phone in that prison. They would not let me use the phone to even phone and check on my property. They were ordered by Judge Brecknell to have me use the phone, and they still wouldn't let me use the phone. They didn't want my documents on that unit. I did sneak some documents back from the trial, though, and so that all the boys on the unit seen.
In Crown Prosecutor Jeff McDonald's initial sentencing position, what did he write on that?
Oh, he thought, he wrote down that there was mental issues, as they always do. You have to be crazy, don't you, to say something bad about these people? And they do it to everyone. Everyone. There, you have a mental problem. As a matter of fact, Pete Burnstead is going around McBride telling everybody, oh, poor Frankie went off his medication. His daughter told me. Well, my daughter's phone number is going to be on this link. And you call my daughter and ask her if she said that, and she'll tell you absolutely not, because it's not true.
Did the court or any certain judge recommend you have a mental evaluation?
Oh, they talked about it, but then they decided that that wasn't a very good idea. In giving that I was a counselor at one time for the Ministry of Children and Families, and I know how that system works and how corrupt it is and how overwhelmingly the social workers feel this sense of power that they have.
You just mentioned that you're a counselor for the Ministry of Children and Families. When and where?
I was a counselor for Head Start Industries in Penticton, BC. I counsel people with head injuries, people with mental disabilities. I also work for the Quesnel Association for the Mentally Handicapped in Quesnel.
For how long and what years?
Approximately 11 years I worked within the ministry and different parts of that organization and others.
So when you referred back to they were trying to say that or Pete Burnson had made reference saying that you were off your meds as he was slandering your name according to your statement here, were you at any time on any medications?
Never in my life. Never in my life.
So that would be construed as another character assassination attempt?
Absolutely. And that was just done for the locals. Everybody in McBride to think that I was on some medication. Ask my daughter. She'll tell you. My son will tell you. Never in my life have I ever been on any kind of medication. Never in my life.
That could be verified with your doctor as well.
Absolutely. 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 My medical records will reflect that. As I pointed out earlier, I don't even take an aspirin. Nothing. The whole idea of charging me with this crime was to get my DNA. So that now they have my DNA and they're, I'm sure, looking and putting together some case to pin some murder or whatever crime that they've got in line for me.
Why would they request for you to supply a DNA sample?
My question to the court as well.
And
it was only done exactly what I just pointed out.
When did you have to go for a DNA sample?
On September 30th, I went in and gave the DNA sample.
2013.
Yeah. Yeah. A constable from Lewisport, apparently. He said he's from Lewisport. I doubt that. Where I went to trade school in Newfoundland. And he didn't even know what he was doing. I had to show him, actually. And so I questioned that DNA and even the sample itself, the way he did it. And, you know, I know they're going to try and do something with that DNA sample. As a matter of fact, I was a mercenary soldier, which they, proudly announce each time. I worked for many governments around the world doing a lot of very bad things. And, they don't want to come at me like they did the guy in Quesnel, because I'll fight back. And anyway, they use this all the time as turning me into a bad guy. Well, I wasn't a bad guy. Even then, I was serving my country and others. And no mercenary that I know is a criminal. They'd love to make us criminals, especially us old boys, that old school, that know that the things that they did over there in other countries.
Well, it appears widely renounced in the public eye now that the RCMP and the federal and provincial governments are attacking war veterans here in Canada now and killing them, like today's front page story.
Certainly, certainly, because they don't want those people telling what they did in those other countries. And here, I was approached on numerous occasions by the RCMP to perform executions in this country. One point, in fact, my ex-wife, Marjorie Smith, Frost Penner is her name, lives in Quesnel, works for Safeway, was present when a gentleman by the name of Nick Stone came with a wanted poster that the detachment of Elkford had sent him to ask me to execute these two men if I seen them. And apparently they were going around burning people in their motorhomes, and they arrested them in Kamloops, and they had to let them go, they said, on a technicality. And they didn't want them back. I won't say, because I may be incriminating myself, of the other things that they asked me to do, but this is in Canada, people. This is in Canada. And I told them then that I was not going to be doing their dirty work in my country. That's Gestapo did that. The ones they hate, they said. I wonder now where the Gestapo even learnt this shit. Because they learnt, I guess, by observing these people. I've known for years about the drug trade that the British government, the American government, and the Canadian government are involved in. Why do you think we were in Afghanistan? There's no oil, there's no natural resources in Afghanistan. None, except heroin. And they were there for Pfizer and other big corporations, and also to replenish their own supply of drugs. That's why they're there. Ask any mercenary why we went to these countries. It was always for natural resources.
Okay, we're kind of getting off the story a bit here. Let's get back to the misfeasance and malfeasance and stalking, harassments that you were speaking about before with the certain RCMP individuals. And could you explain a little bit more about that?
They have broken into my home, stole documents. Barry Kennedy and Jesse Smith went to Carrie's house right in front of her and searched her house and took all of her documents. When Carrie, when I got out of prison here just recently, Carrie went to the reporter, yourself, and asked you to do an interview with her so she could recant everything she said in court and all of the dirty things that she said on the interview, and she wanted to come clean. I had nothing to do with that. That was her wanting to do that to clear her conscience, apparently. And no one has seen her since. And the last I heard was Barry Kennedy telling this reporter at the RCMP detachment in McBride that Carrie didn't want him calling her anymore because she had phoned him to ask him to tell you not to phone her. Now, Carrie's a big girl. If she didn't want you to phone her, she'd call you herself. She set up the appointment, not Barry Kennedy, and nobody has seen her since. Nobody. So I don't know, you know, if she's being held out at this farm she's living on just outside of town at Al Adderley's or not. I don't know. I couldn't answer that. But I will say this, whatever is happening to her, she brought on herself by lying.
How do you think that, do you believe that she may have been coerced?
Oh, absolutely. They've been in her ear all the time. You know, when on the things, she turns me into this, oh, he was this overbearing and threw me on the floor and all of these things. Exactly the same as what they did with this reporter and his wife. You could almost, look, it's like word for word of what Michelle said and what Carrie said about this reporter and myself. The similarities are too much to be a coincidence. They coerce people every day to do their bidding and everything they want you to say, but they can't do it to me. I cannot be bought. I gave them the opportunity twice. Twice I said to them, I just want the guilty parties. Stop involving all these other people and incriminating themselves. I want the guilty parties brought to justice. They said no. Twice. Now I want them all. I want every goddamn one of them that stuck their little nose into this business and went on with a bunch of lying crap. And I want everyone that stuck their dirty fucking dicks into my children. All of them. Every one of them incarcerated. Every one of them. I want my system of government and my courts and my cops to do their jobs and work for me and my friends in my society and around this world, and but in particular, my children. You do your job.
Could you give me a little bit more clarity and explanation in how and what methods they use as we go back to that story? What other methods do the Crown prosecutors and RCMP, what devious methods do they use besides the coercion with Carrie? And how long were you and Carrie together previous to this arrest? And how was your relationship with her at that time?
My relationship with Carrie was one of, I love her. I love her children, which are now my children. She told me she had never felt love till she met me. She didn't even know the definition of love till she met me. I treated her with love and respect at all times. We had our moments. She yelled at me, I yelled at her. All the time of any incident, which wasn't very many, trust me, was about the cops and the ministry. And I didn't understand at the time that, you know, she was doing all these erratic things that I didn't want her to do. And I confronted her on this and said, look, you know, I can't do this if you continue doing this way. It's just not the way it's done. You know, you got to get these people. We have to stick together and we have to put these people in their place. And, you know, she just was so angry. And she wanted her voice. She said, I'm 37 years old. I don't want you to stand in front of me any longer. I need to stand up and let these people know they can't do this to me. She said, because you're not going to be around forever.
Would you believe that it was due to the Ministry of Children and Families and the individuals that you pointed out today and the RCMP and all of this and all of their arrests and etc.? Do you believe that that has what torn your relationship apart with her?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they ripped our relationship apart. They ripped our relationship apart. They do it all the time. And you'll see on my link, and these people that are watching and been through the same things, they will tell you the same things. exactly the same things. They tear the family unit apart. That's the first goal. It's just like lions hunting gazelles. Separate them from the herd. Separate them from the herd, the oldest trick in the book. Get one to turn on the other. Another oldest trick in the book. Excuse me. They knew they couldn't get to me because I could not be bought and I could not be coerced. I am too strong an individual to be coerced by anybody.